Hello, all, and welcome to another Sci-Fi Fantasy Saturday. Today, we unbox and take a look at Star Trek missions from WizKids. And it says it's based on fantasy realms. Well, what does that mean? It means it's based on this game here by Bruce Glasgow, which was a little bit groundbreaking on how it decided to deal with hand building. Basically, this is a hand building game, not necessarily a deck building. You're going to have a hand of cards, and on your turn, you're going to draw a card either from the deck or from an open tableau, and that's it. Then you'll discard a card, right? And this will rinse and repeat until there are 10 cards in that open tableau, and then the game ends, and then you look at your hand and add up the points. But that's where the trick lies, right? That's where the complication starts, and that's where the game actually begins, is in the scoring, because the cards you have in your hand are going to either add more points or take points away or not score you any points based on how they combined with other cards. In Fantasy Realm, it was all fantasy type cards and creatures and locations and equipment. In Star Trek missions, well, I think you can guess what this is going to be about. This is going to be about Star Trek themes and characters and worlds and the like. And again, this is based on Fantasy Realms, which has kind of branched out into other areas as well. There is Remix, which is based on Fantasy Realms, and it takes it to the Marvel Universe. And there's even a board game that doesn't, exclusively rely upon the scoring mechanisms, but that's the heart of it. There's a card playing mechanism where you are trying to match up cards in your hand or that you have that you're going to have at the end of the game to score the most points. There's a lot of other stuff going on. There's an actual board and figures on the board or pieces on the board that you move around and track and having some tracks. But for the most part, that hand scoring mechanism is still very important. And the characters in this game are all based upon, books by Pierce Brown, Red Rising. There's a lot of books in this series. It's kind of got its own, and some thick ones too. That's pretty thick there. Over time, it's gotten quite of its own following of books there. But anyway, this is based on Red Rising, and this game didn't get a lot of love, and I don't know why. I like this game. My family doesn't really like it as much either, but I like it. I like the core mechanism of the scoring that comes from Fantasy Realms, but there's other stuff going on and other decisions you have to make. And it really doesn't, it's not that complicated. But this is a Jamie Stegmaier game. And yeah, so don't understand why this didn't get much love. But that's not what we're here for today. We're not here for Fantasy Realms. We're not here for Remix. We are here for Star Trek missions. So this is going to have that hand building game, that hand scoring mechanism that is in Fantasy Realms, but it's going to take it to the Star Trek world. So if we look on the back here, you're going to get an example of some of the cards here that are in here. And this is a little different than some of the than Fantasy Realms or Remix and how they lay out the cards and the like. One thing I think that this game is different is that the cards don't have a base value. In Fantasy Realms, there was a base value, and then the question was, are you going to be able to score that base value, or is it going to have a plus or minus depending on what it's combined with? Remix is somewhat the same way, although in Remix they added a requirement. There was a villain deck. So you had the basic deck, and then you had the villain deck. And then the villain deck, there wasn't very many cards there, but in order to score anything, you had to have a hero, an ally, and a villain. And the heroes and allies were in the main deck or the basic deck. And then you had to get one of the 10 villains, which had a lot of negative scoring because, they're villains. This one takes it a little bit further on having the two decks. And we'll look at that when we get inside the box. But, there are two kind of, not just a 10-card villain deck, but a relatively larger second deck that you have to manage in this game. And I don't know if there's base values. I think it's all based on, you know, what kind of combinations you have on whether you score anything at all. But enough of that. Let's get inside the box and see what I'm talking about here. These are all from WizKids. Got a lot of games from WizKids. Oh, nice little tight little box there. Kind of thick box there. There's not going to be a lot of rules to this. I mean, this is your rules. It is not that many pages. So you've got your overview. So you have characters. Let's see. Characters are captains, personnel, and civilians. Locations, systems, and on the Enterprise. You have specialty, life form, affiliation, text, and let's see here. So you shuffle the Galaxy and Mission deck. So you have your Galaxy deck or your main deck, the Galaxy deck, the Mission deck, and the discard area. So you're going to have the Galaxy deck is all the main cards, right? And then you have the Mission deck is this special deck that I was talking about. And then you're going to have your discard area. So you're going to draw or draw from the discard area, then discard, and then rinse and repeat until there's 10. I imagine this one game is same as the Fantasy Realms and Remix, where it's 10 cards in the tableau, but we'll take a look here when we get in here. Here's the game here. At the end of your turn, after discarding, you must have 1 or 2 mission cards. You may never have 0 or more than 2. So that's kind of the requirement here. In the Remix, you had to have at least 1 villain, but there's only 10 in the deck. Here you have to have at least 1 or 2 missions, but not 0 or more than 2. So that's another requirement. They've added a little bit of a wrinkle here in making your decisions. You have to play with this second deck and have some cards from it in order to play the game. And then you got end game when there are 8 Galaxy cards or 12 mission cards in the discard pile. So this is a little bit different. You know, in Remix and Fantasy, if there's 10 cards in the that are face up, you know, in the discard area, then game ends. Here it's 8 Galaxy cards, that's the main deck, or 12 mission cards. So again, another little wrinkle. I don't know, a lot of people I think that like Fantasy Realms and like Remix, you know, have kind of complained or do not like that aspect of this game where you've got this whole other thing you got to manage. Do they make it complex just for complexity's sake? You know, does it really add to the game having this mission deck and having to count whether you have 8 or 12 and all that other stuff? It does make it a little bit more complicated, but not overly complicated in my opinion. And you have scoring examples because that's where the meat of this game is. It's all in the scoring. Then you got an FAQ. You're going to have a scoring pad here that is double-sided, so you got plenty of pad or pieces of paper to score your missions on. You're going to have your player, and then you're going to have the different cards. And each card, you know, feeds off another card, so that's why the scoring becomes very, very complicated. If you thought bowling was complicated, this is even more so. Because each of the card kind of plays off another card or plays off a group of cards, and then you've got to add up all the related scoring on there. Get my silica intake for the day, and then we have our 2 decks. So this mission deck, I can tell you right now, is a little bit more meaty than the villain deck in Remix, and the Galaxy deck is pretty much, you know, kind of the same heft as the other ones. Fantasy Realm, it was just 1 deck. So, you know, with these supplements that are coming out, or these new iterations of the game that are coming out, you're getting some new and different you know, a little bit different features, I should say, you know, having this mission deck now. So this is the Galaxy deck here. They all have the same back. And then you're going to have, this is a personnel. You've got civilian, equipment, location, captain, system, entity, location. So those are the different types up there. And then this is its titles, like Ambassador, Security, Klingon, Human, Federation, and it's 10 with Lieutenant Worf. So this one's going to, you know, this doesn't score anything, right? That's something different from Fantasy and Remix. There was an actual base value on the cards. This is worth 0 unless you get Lieutenant Worf. This one right here is 5 for each non-Federation captain. So you have to have other captains in the deck that are not Federation. So you need, like this one is a Klingon, so that's going to help. That's going to give it 5 for every one that it has in here. So this game, right, I can tell you right now, is going to be a little bit more complex because that base value gave you kind of something to, you at least you're going to get that, and you're trying to protect that from either a 0 score if it was blanked, or something like that. Now you get this, you go, well, I got nothing unless I have to combine this with something. So I have to end up with my final deck, or my final hand, I should say. I've got to match it, I got to match it with one Klingon with that symbol, or Klingon Empire with that symbol, or Klingon is that symbol, or Klingon Empire is that symbol. So you've got a lot of iconography, but you also have the language too. Or 16 with 2 or more Klingon or Klingon Empire. So you got to have some Klingons for this thing here. Otherwise, it's 0, right? And that's how this whole deck's going to work. And you're going to have characters from the series. There's Jean-Luc Picard. So throughout, there's Riker, Computer, Counselor Troy, all this kind of stuff. Crusher. There's Ensign Wesley Crusher. So there's Data. Then you got lore. Okay. Anyway, so that's the game. Is again, not complicated at all. You're going to have a hand of cards that you start off with, and then it's building that hand, right? Maneuvering, either drawing cards or picking stuff that's out there. There's going to be tough choices on what you discard, because it might be something that you need to combine with something else, but you got to discard a card every turn. So there are the that's the Galaxy deck, and now you have this Mission deck, and this is an extra feature that's not in the original game, where you have to have 1 or 2 of these, and these are going to again give you bonuses. 5 for every personnel with a different one of those symbols, and for each transporter, tricorder, or hand phaser. So there's the Borg cube. So you're going to have all these different missions out here. You have to have at least 1 in your hand, no more than 2. And so that adds a whole nother, difference, or a whole nother tactic to this game, another decision point of how to manage these missions. So anyway, so there you have it. That is Star Trek Missions. Love to know your thoughts on this. Have you played Fantasy Realms? Have you played Remix? Have you played Red Rising? And do you like that mechanic? Did you find it interesting? Again, this is a really simple game. This is probably the most complex out of the Red Rising's got a little bit more going on, but out of just the straight card games of Fantasy Realms Remix and this Star Trek Missions is probably the most complex, because it has that mission requirement that adds a little bit more decision points to the game. But love to know what you think about any of this stuff. This is an interesting mechanic. It's a very simple mechanic, and the games play relatively fast. The scoring actually sometimes takes longer than the gameplay, or pretty close, because the scoring can be really complicated. And now this game, where you don't have any base scoring, I can imagine that that's going to be even tougher. Probably some lower scoring games in this one, I would imagine. Anyway, that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for stopping by on this Sci-Fi Fantasy Saturday. And the best way to know you stop by is drop me a comment. Let me know what you think about this game, Fantasy Realms, Remix, Red Rising, any of the Red Rising books. I don't care. I'd like to know what you're thinking. Anyway, have a good one. Thanks for watching.